Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Bill Evans. Welcome to Punta Last of Winning Restaurants Do Differently. I am the co-chair of the Port Charlotte Store Chapter. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize and thank the organizations making today possible. First, our gold sponsor, Cheney Brothers Foods. Cheney Brothers is a long-standing and highly respected partner to the restaurant industry across Florida. Support for programs like this reflects a genuine commitment by Cheney Brothers to helping restaurants not just survive, but thrive. We're grateful for their sponsorship and continued leadership in the hospitality industry. Second, our silver sponsor, the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association. The FRLA has a 2-decade tradition of supporting the hospitality industry in Florida with advocacy, education, networking, and promotion. We're also very thankful to the Military Heritage Museum for allowing us to use this beautiful venue today. Today's program is co-hosted by the Punta Gorda Chamber of Commerce and the Charlotte County Economic Development Office. Both organizations play a critical role supporting business growth and economic vitality in our region. A special shout out goes to Maria Vastola, Sean McLaughlin, Isaac James, and Mark Odell, who led expertise in the design and logistics of this program. And as I mentioned previously, this event is presented by SCORE, the nation's largest network of volunteer business mentors. We provide free, confidential, one-on-one mentoring to small business owners. If you are running a restaurant, SCORE Mentoring is a valuable resource available to you at no charge. Just go to score.org to request a mentor. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our featured speaker and one of our newest SCORE mentors. Ed Rensi is a former president and CEO of McDonald USA. His career is one of the great success stories in the restaurant industry. It began at the Golden Arches in Columbus, Ohio, where, Ed tells me, his first job was cutting trays of brownies. Ed promised not to have a demonstration today. Ed is proud to say he worked at every job at McDonald's on his way up the leadership ladder. As president and CEO, he led McDonald's through a period of extraordinary growth, overseeing thousands of locations, helping to shape many of the operational systems that define the business today. He was also instrumental in creating Ronald McDonald House. Since retiring from McDonald's, Ed has remained deeply engaged in the restaurant business as a highly sought-after consultant, working with independent operators and restaurant brands on leadership, operations, profitability, and long-term sustainability. His insights are practical, experience-based, and directly applicable to today's restaurant challenges. Ed will deliver remarks for about 30 minutes and take your questions. And think about the questions, because we have a fabulous prize. We have a hat. United States 250th anniversary that Ed provided. So the first person to ask a question gets a hat. Please join me in welcoming Ed Rensi.
He told me how to turn it on and I forgot. That gives you an indication what this conversation is going to be about. You know, I started in the restaurant business at a very young age, snuggling up at my mother's breast and understanding what great food really was. The restaurant industry is a whole lot more art than it is science, but if you get really good at it, sit down in front here, I'm not going to hit you. Well, you guys are afraid of me, right? You can tell those guys are chefs. They like to look. Anyway, the food industry snuck up on me when I was going to school at the Ohio State University. Anybody here from Michigan? Me. There you go. I had my best friend in the whole world graduated from the University of Michigan. Ended up getting a PhD in finance and ran all their finance for one of their major departments there. I really value that rivalry and value great education. I went to Hamburg University. I have a bachelor's in good service, crispy French fries, and cold Coke. cold Coke, that's a beverage for some of you folks that don't know what that is. You don't sniff it, you don't shoot it, you drink it. Anyway, to the real subject here, restaurants. The hospitality industry is an art form that's backed up with a tremendous amount of science. Because food at the end of the day is about intelligent chemistry to make people happy spiritually and provide nutrition to keep their bodies in good shape. As we march through our lives, we pick up a lot of bad habits. The one habit we should really pay attention to is what we eat, how we eat it, when we eat it. Because food can be very nourishing or it can be very dangerous. Too much of anything is never good. How do we go about the business of eating? Have you ever thought about that? How many of you in here eat because you're hungry? None of you know what hunger is. None of you. If you look around the world, there are societies and communities and people that are really starving for calories and food and input. That's hunger. The people in the United States largely eat out of boredom, stress, and habit. Very seldom they eat because of nutrition. And the whole process of eating begins in your brain. It's cultural. You tend to eat the most of what your parents cooked you when you were a child. The genre of food, not necessarily a specific item. I grew up in a very Italian family. So my tendencies as an adult is to lean heavily into red wine, 100% Sangiovese grape, every chance I can get it, and then to good meats that are got layers and layers of flavor in it. And culturally, we tend to look at food based on how we were raised. And some of us that are professionals, like these well-trained chefs, study food in ways I'll never understand. I never was a chef, and I don't even claim to be a chef, because that is an art form that takes a lot of training and skill. You know, Gordon Ramsay, who's probably one of the best chefs in the United States, although he has his critics, has a theory that you should not have more than 10 menu items on your menu. I'm talking about fine dining. And you should perfect those 10 items to the point that there are nobody that's going to criticize that product or that offering. And then surround it with the proper kinds of products and foods that will support the essence of that center of the plate. People don't understand that aren't in the restaurant business that food is very visual. Your eyes see it first, and the presentation is super important. The silverware, the plating, the packaging is all important in supporting the quality of that product and presenting its beauty, because we first eat with our brain, thinking about what we eat, then we eat with our eyes. It is appealing. Then we put it in our mouth. Our nose tastes it first, and then our palate tastes it last. And then you walk out of there. Do you enjoy the food? Yeah. But you know what you enjoy more? Dining with other people. There's the psychological impact of food. How many of you own a restaurant? How many of you wish you didn't? Because it's a love-hate relationship. There's nothing better than an evening service that's perfect. And there's nothing worse than an evening service that fails. And I don't care if you're in the hamburger business or the steak business or whatever business you're in. You have goals and objectives when you prepare that food. Does that food meet your goal and objective? Does it look right? Is it presented right? You can cook the most perfect steak in the world, but if you got a waiter or waitress that's a jerk, the food's not going to taste as good. If you're in a doghouse trying to eat a baked Alaska, it ain't going to work. There's got to be a harmony in the dining out experience. What is the number one problem every restaurant the world has, and it's a daily challenge that's unfathomable. People! They are the greatest thing in the world, the biggest pains in the butt in the world. Because they all have their own idea how they ought to present the plate, or the service, or whatever. They're experts, because their mama told them how to eat biscuits. But their mother's biscuits were horrible. So you end up, unless you've been educated and trained and practiced the art, you're going to fail at this thing. The number one thing I used to tell everybody, and I worked in a lot of restaurants. The Alameda Inn was the first restaurant I ever worked in. My mother or dad bought it in 1964. Big mistake. My dad was a truck driver, and my mother was a secretary. Thank God my mother knew how to cook. My dad knew how to eat, a boss. She cooked, he bitched. It's just the way it was. But they had this restaurant, and they lived upstairs. It was a Greyhound bus stop. It was halfway between Philadelphia and Columbus, Ohio. The bus would stop there, fill up with fuel, and then a Imperial station in front. Not my parents, but the people who owned it, the Adams family. The bus driver would go upstairs and stay in 6 rooms. Because the guy coming from Philadelphia would stay there overnight, pick that bus up, and take it back to Philly from. So that's what they were doing, like the Pony Express of buses. So my mom and dad bought this restaurant for $90,000. My mother was a slave in the kitchen. My dad sat at the counter and bitched about everything. He was actually a police officer, county sheriff. I learned to hate the restaurant business being in that place because I had to stay there when I came home from college. But my mother was really good at hospitality. My dad was good at making friends. So whatever they lacked in sophistication, right? They lost money every year they were there. Thank God I went to work for McDonald's to help them out a little bit. I don't want to get too far away from this. Running a restaurant and doing it well takes a lot of experience, a lot of work, and a lot of study. Hospitality is a very, very, very difficult business because everybody's a critic. If you've ever eaten food, if you've eaten bad food all your life, you think bad food's good. If you've eaten really good food is not as good as excellent food. You just got all kinds of psychological issues going on here. So how do we eat? We say, I'm hungry. Most people aren't. It just got to happen. Most people say, let's go to eat. Well, where do you want to go? Well, some people say, let's go to Joe's because you got a good bar. Another person says, well, let's go to Sally because she's got great dessert. Everybody's got a reason why they want to go to a restaurant. The magic is, how do you support that customer base where they want to build frequency and loyalty? Now let's think about this for a minute. This is the difference between leadership and management. Let's talk about leadership for a minute. There's people that own a restaurant. Put your hand up. I want to see who you are, because I want to talk to you both. Oh, I didn't introduce you to my wife, Barbara. Barbara, stand up. Barbara is Are you applauding because you know she manages me and she does a good job? Barbara is a serial franchisee. She started off with a bread route with her first husband, and they delivered bread to homes. Then they bought a Dunkin' Donuts and started something. The Dunkin' Donuts is one tough business, let me tell you. And then she got into McDonald's. That's why I met her. Her and her husband were running a restaurant near the corporate headquarters. And they started, it was a company store that was not doing well. And they started to build the business. I couldn't understand how the hell these two kids could make this restaurant so good when the company couldn't make it run. It was all about the personality. It was all about the style. It was about the delivery. It was about the front of the house. We sold 15-cent hamburgers corrected for inflation, and they were knocking it out of the park. I used to go sit on our parking lot and just watch what they were doing on lunch breaks and stuff, because our corporate headquarters is just down the street. So what the hell are these kids doing that I need to learn from? Because there's magic in here. They're running double-digit increases when we couldn't do it as a company store. And I could begin to see it. Customer service that was incredible. They did a breakfast program. They put eggs out on the front counter. They put a refrigerator out there. They started showing people the products that went into the Egg McMuffin. So they knew they were using real eggs, real cheese, real bacon, Canadian bacon, and the customers knew this was real food, not plastic food. There's a lot of our critics have to say about it. Pardon?
Go back to leadership.
Oh, I just got a performance review. She didn't want me talking about a restaurant. She did a really great job. That's when I first met her, by the way. Excuse me. So when you get into the thought of leadership as a restaurateur, you have to think about, okay, I want to open up a restaurant. And you start to develop a vision. Because leadership is all about strategy. Leadership is developing a concept, developing all the necessary support mechanisms, and you being the leader that people want to follow to execute against the standards you're going to set for performance in your business. That's leadership. That's setting out the systems, processes, and procedures to make the place run like a fine orchestra. Then you get into management. Management is the art of getting people to do things they don't want to do, but should learn how to do, and you're going to teach them how to do it, and then you got to get them to the point where they do it because it's right and not because they have to do it. That's management. That's understanding who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, what you like, what you don't like. That means getting to know you as a manager of the business with me. If I'm going to be your leader, if I'm going to manage the performance of this restaurant, I need to know as much about you as I know about myself, so that we can work together as a team. You cannot operate a restaurant unless you have a vision of what you want to do, and you have the strength to listen to your people as, hello, you win $500 for the Gorda. Go ahead and take the call, I'll wait. Then in public speaking, has to others recognize the interruption and say it's okay. We don't make mistakes, right? You don't have a good. Anyway, when you think about the whole process of management, it comes down to really knowing and understanding your people and putting systems, processes, and procedures in place that are written down so when in doubt you can teach and educate and help. You never ever want to fire anybody, because that's your failure. You never want to linger over a decision, because people depend on you and you depend on people. So if you're going to hire somebody, you need to do a really top-notch job of selecting them and making sure they understand exactly what it is you want them to do. No drifting around saying, well, that sounds okay. Maybe I can do it. Well, Fred did it, so why can't I do it? It doesn't work that way. In the restaurant, you're dealing with people's health, food safety. You're dealing with safety of the floors being dry and not slippery. Up north, it's about snow and ice. It's about safety in the kitchen. You chefs, how about knife skills? Very important. If you teach knife skills, they won't cut their finger off. They still may have an accident, but they'll know the right way to manage those sharp tools. Slicers. Those things are sharp. You got to teach this stuff. It doesn't happen by accident. Food safety. My goodness gracious, can you think of anything more important than food safety? The last thing in the world you want to do is make a really good creamy soup that's got bad bacteria in it, doesn't get stuck in the refrigerator, and the closing crew's afraid to tell you they left it out all night, and they serve it anyway. That's not good. I don't know about you, but have you ever had any food poisons in your restaurant? Let me tell you, I went through mad cow disease. You know, remember that problem? If you ask me about that later, I'll tell you how McDonald solved that problem. Anyway, these are the things that are important. Systems, processes, procedures, follow-up, and an ongoing desire to elevate your people to the next level of performance and strength. Let's talk about the menu for a minute. The worst thing you can do is have an owner of a restaurant that really, really likes some kind of food and wants to build a restaurant around that food. For example, he really loves pork. So he built a restaurant featuring pork in a Hasidic Jewish community. How's that going to work out for you? Now that's an extreme statement. But people, this restaurant business starts with location, 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 location. Do you know your customer? Do you know your customer? Do you know where they work? Do you know where they play? Do you know where they go to the doctor? Do you know where they shop? Do you know what roads they take? Do you know a little thought? Women picking their kids up after school that want to go to a McDonald's restaurant don't like driving over railroad tracks. In Philadelphia, where I used to manage that region, there's a lot of streetcars and trains and stuff. Big problem. You build on the wrong side of the track, you're toast. Particularly when you're dealing with Happy Meals and school kids. Women don't like making left turns off the 408 highways. Now I can tell you another story. McKnight Road. Anybody here from Pittsburgh? Jim Delegati invented the Big Mac out of Pittsburgh. I was his guy back in the day. And I built a restaurant on the southbound side of McKnight Road going into the city of Pittsburgh from the northern suburbs. That store opened up to $3 million the first year. Damn, this is great. It was all breakfast and lunch. Zero dinner.
Because they were going the other way.
They were going the wrong direction. I said, well, shit, let's build a restaurant on the other side of the street. We literally built a restaurant on the other side of the street about 400 yards down. Guess what? It did $3 million. We caught them all going home. Know your customers, know where they live, where they work, and where they play. When you are thinking about your vision and your leadership skills, that kind of thing is very important. What is the average disposable income of your customers within a 3-mile radius of your restaurant? If you can't tell me that, you're not doing your job. Now, Florida's weird. I gotta tell you, Florida's one of the weirdest restaurant markets I've ever been in my life. McDonald's goes like hell in the off-season, drops dead in season. Because the people that live here year-round don't want to fight all the people from up north. So they don't go out on the roads. They got a secret way to get around town. When they all go home, then they get down the main roads and go to your restaurant. During the season, you got everybody in the world showing up from Europe and Canada and Chicago and where else they're coming from. The traffic is jammed up. Your locals have more of a problem under those circumstances. The season is good. It's a cycle. You've got to understand that. Who are your customers? Where are they from? What's their disposable income? And you need to test that. I used to do something in every restaurant. When I was running Famous Dave's Barbecue, I did this. I don't want to talk about all of them, but I would go and get maps of a 3-mile trading area around the restaurant. And I had 3 dots. I think they were green, yellow, and red. Red was where I'm going to, I can't remember exactly, where I'm going to, where I'm coming from, and where I'm shopping. Or there was a 4th of where I live. And we would have customers come in, and we would give them a free something, a beverage or a sandwich or whatever it was. And we'd ask them to put a sticker, we didn't know their name. We'd ask them to put a sticker on that map so we could start to see the travel path. What is the travel path of your customers most frequent? Now, fine dining is different than fast food. Fast food is an opportunistic purchase. Fine dining is a deliberate decision based on your neighbors, your friends that go there together to socialize. Fine dining is about socialization. It's about having a nice, quiet table where you can sit and talk about the football game, the movie you saw. It's a social, nobody in this country hardly eats because they're hungry. It's habit. So when they go out to eat, it's entertainment. It's a form of entertainment. So how do you make that experience even better? We as restaurant operators get way down deep in the weeds sometimes and can't see what's going on around us because we're too busy internally and not externally. Know your customers. During the peak of service, if you're the owner of that restaurant and you're not walking around to every table and touching every table or having your manager touch every table, you're making a mistake. Hi, how are you? It's good to see you again. How do you find the meal? How do you find the service? Is there anything that Joey, who's your server, can do anything for you? Is there anything we can do for you? Was the bathroom all right? Let's talk about bathrooms for a minute. Bathrooms are one of your most important marketing opportunities. Now, I ran Famous Dave's Barbecue for about 7 years. And I went into those restrooms and you could tell they were designed by men. The ladies didn't like their bathrooms. Just to give you one example, and I'm not going to get into an argument with you women because I'll lose happily. Women want a mirror in front of them, and they want a mirror behind them. They want to make sure the back view and the front view are okay. There's nothing worse than walking out with toilet paper hanging out of your pants. Okay, I'm overstating that. But having mirrors on both sides of the bathroom is very important in the ladies' room. Having secure locks on the stalls is important. Having paper, tissue paper, hand towels, soap, that kind of stuff is very, very important because it says you care. There's a restaurant in Chicago. I don't want to get into the whole story about this. The men's room and the ladies' room. And there was a curtain at the end of the bathroom. And behind that curtain was a tall gentleman that was pretty close to being nude. And in the men's room, there was a tall lady behind that curtain, nearly nude. And everybody would go in there and look behind the curtain to see what was in there. And there was a sign there that said, "Aha, caught you." Tongue in cheek. I tell that story because as owners of restaurants and operators of restaurants, the restroom is very, very important. People want the level of quality of that space to be as good as the restaurant space. Because if the bathroom's dirty and crummy and disorganized and ugly, what's the kitchen look like? Clean bathrooms mean clean kitchens. Now, these are the nuances of restaurants that people need to pay attention to. Everybody knows how to have a clean restaurant, right? But do you know why? It impacts the quality of your food and presentation. That's why. It's a service, but it's also a necessity to make your business grow. Everything in your restaurant matters. The lighting matters. The seats matter. I can't tell you how many restaurants I go into that still have the same furniture they put in there 30 years ago. The seats are busted out. The legs are all scratched up. It just looks dirty and crummy. And if that's how the furniture looks, what the hell does the kitchen look like? I don't know about you all, but I go to a lot of seafood restaurants because I like Florida seafood. I'll tell you, some of these restaurants that are selling fish smell like they ought to get out of business. You know, aroma, your eyes eat first, your nose eats second. The last thing that happens is you put it in your mouth. And if your place has a distinct odor of perfume, what are you hiding? If your restroom smells like a restroom, I'm wrong. You want your restaurant not to smell except the beautiful aroma of wonderfully prepared food that's on the plate in front of your face. Everything matters. When you mop the floors, are the mops clean? How do you mop the floor clean when you got a dirty mop and dirty mop on it? These are all the details of running restaurants. I don't care if it's a fast food joint or fine dining. Little story. You tell me when I'm running out of time, because I can take a while. I go to Famous Dave's Barbecue. Our serviceware cost was through the roof. Knives, forks, plates. Couldn't figure out what the hell is going on with all this stuff. So I called up, I started watching the busboys and how they were bussing the tables and how they were setting up the dishwasher. Because a good busser makes the dishwashing process a lot easier. I was doing consulting work for 5 restaurants out in Sarasota. Said, you guys have got the worst busing system I've ever seen in my life. First of all, you have them carrying trays around, they set it on the table, they load all the stuff in the bucket or the tray, then they carry it. I said, let's get a nice stainless steel. I keep forgetting, I'm used to a lavalier mic. Let's get a device on a roller, have a clean tub on the bottom, a clean tub on top, the silverware goes in this thing, the plates go here, the garbage goes under here, pre-bus for the dishwasher. Wipe the table down with sanitizer. Go into the dishwasher. Famous Dave's Barbecue. I couldn't figure out why our serviceware cost was so high. So I called up the 7 managers in Chicago. I said, when you close tonight, I want you to take the garbage bags, seal them up, put them in your car, and bring them over to the store in Bolingbrook, Illinois. When they got there, I had 7 waiting tubs for little kids. So I made every manager take 1 bag and dump it in there. I took a magnetic thing and started pulling the silverware out of there. Pulled the silverware out of there. ARA was doing all of our laundry, our tablecloths, aprons and all that stuff. I called him up and I said, when you bus a hotel ballroom, how much silverware do you get in the tablecloths and stuff? So, oh my God, we get pounds and pounds of it. So I went over to the ARA where they did the laundry, the chef's uniforms, and the aprons. I said, show me. These are giant sized washing machines. They were dumping silverware on those things like crazy. I said, what do you do with all this silverware? I thought they sent it to a junk car and melt it down. So, oh, we sell it to restaurants. I said, are you serious? He said, yeah. I said, I'll tell you what. How do you sell it? He said, by the pound. I said, from now on, Famous Dave's is going to use your silverware. Well, Famous Dave's guy said, but Dave Anderson, Famous Dave Anderson. Yeah, the silverware doesn't match. I said, it's a barbecue joint, nothing matches. It's just his mom's kitchen, for Christ's sake. Let's just buy the silverware. So we buy silverware by the pound from ARA. Now, I don't want to overplay this because that was a chain of restaurants that had 600, 700 restaurants. That made a difference. These are the things we need to start thinking about in the restaurant industry. The chefs, if they own the place, they think about it. If the owner owns it, they don't think about where the hell's all this silverware going. I had a guy making brisket. Now, you know briskets, there's two of them in an animal, there's 2 different muscles in there, and you smoke them. A 30-pound brisket, you got to smoke longer than a 9-pound brisket. Well, Famous Dave's was loading all those briskets in and smoked them all the same. So the 9-pound brisket was grossly overdone, and a 28-pound brisket was grossly underdone. I said, why don't we open up a commissary? We'll have 4 of them. We'll put all 9 pounds in this one, we'll put all 20 pounds in this, we'll put 30 pounds in this. and we'll smoke them so they're all exactly the same. I don't want to go to a barbecue joint and get a beautiful brisket sandwich one time that's like shoe leather, and go to the next time and it's beautiful. Consistency counts. Now that's a chain operation. Independent's going to think the same way but a different scale. When you own your own restaurant, you're a chef, you pay more attention sometimes to the kitchen than you do the front of the house. If you're a front of the house person, your biases get in the way of running a restaurant. Know your customers, know your employees, because your employees are customers first and employees second. No matter what you do, learn to have fun in restaurants, because it can be very taxing. Those of you that own a restaurant, how often do you walk through the dining room greeting your customers? How much, huh? So I want to talk to the chefs for a minute. This is a very important question. You ever use salt in cooking? What?
The most important ingredient.
Okay, so you use salt. Do you ever use pepper?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I got a thought for you. If you're going to use pepper, use Malabar black pepper from the coast of India and grind it in-house, because the volatile oils in that pepper will evaporate. If you buy it out of a tin can, it's already just hot black stuff. You don't want hot black stuff. You want that aroma of fresh pepper. Now, I'm not a chef, not even close. I'm an almost good cook, almost. Pepper is a very, very important ingredient, because on roasted meat, your nose tastes that steak first, or that meat first. Salt. How many of you use Morton salt? Put your hand up if you use Morton salt. Why do you use Morton salt?
Always have.
Why? That's not a reason, that's a thing.
It's what I grew up with.
Okay, that's 99% of the answer is going to be, that's what I know. Well, let me tell you what. Ask yourself this question. Is there such a thing as garlic salt? Say yes or no.
Yes.
Talk, listen, yeah, I want to hear it.
Yes.
No, garlic salt is not garlic salt. It's salt that's got garlic mixed with it. If you're going to use garlic, don't use dried garlic with salt. Use fresh garlic. If you're going to use salt, use salt. Is celery salt? Why not? Have you ever taken celery and dried it and ground it up and tasted it? You ought to try that sometime. You won't even know what it is. It's green powdery stuff. Celery salt is a marketing tool by McCormick to sell more salt. Cheap salt at a high price. You want to use a great salt, you're going to spend more money for this. And I'll tell you why you ought to use it. You ought to use Redmond's sea salt from out west. It comes out of a 6,000-year-old salt dome that's mined underground. It's pink. You know why it's pink?
Minerals.
Algae. It's an ancient seabed. What is in that salt? You know? Come on, Frank, you know everything. You work the score. You're a mentor guy. Come on. There's all kinds of salts. There's potassium chloride, there's sodium chloride, etc., etc., etc. In that Redmond sea salt, there's 4 or 5 different salts. Sodium's bad for your blood pressure. Those other salts aren't. So there's a health reason for doing it. There's a taste reason for doing it. I suggest you all get on Amazon tonight and order some Redmond sea salt. Now, what you all do, you guys that own restaurants, the gals that own restaurants, you got these fancy new grinders that are being sold by food distribution companies. Two problems with that. In Florida, it's humid. You can't get the salt out when they get humid. Second thing is, all these old people are stealing them and taking it home because they don't want to buy salt. This is the cheapest damn thing you could ever buy in a grocery store. Well, you can stop that theft. First of all, Gordon Ramsay says if you put salt and pepper on your table, you failed as a chef. I'm quoting him, but I have to tell you, what's that lady's name that took me out and taught me how to do French fries? California. Julia Childs called me up one day, said, she was in California. She said, Mr. Rensi, I want you to know you changed your cooking oil for French fries at McDonald's. You went from beef oil to vegetable oil. You've made a terrible mistake. I'd like to discuss this with you. I said, well, okay. She said, I don't want to do it on the phone. I want you to come out here to see me. So I flew out to California, went to Julia Child's kitchen. Now, I don't know if you know this, but she was a very big woman. She worked in intelligence in Britain back in the day. Smart as hell, wonderful personality. She's behind this counter, and I'm sitting on a stool. He says, Mr. Rensi, your pommes frites are out, or she said that in her accent. She said, you've ruined your potatoes at McDonald's. I said, well, Miss Childs, okay, so help me. And that's exactly what I said, so help me. She said, why did you quit using beef oil to cook your French fries? Potatoes have no taste. People eat the beef taste in the French fries. Well, I'll tell you why, Miss Childs, because we were getting our ass handed to us by everybody in the population saying animal fat's bad for you. Even though I used to tell people, we're all animals, we all have fat, and we're still alive. So she went through a whole cooking demonstration of how to prepare potatoes for me. Now, we were only doing about 400 million pounds of French fries a year, but she was not concerned with that. She was concerned with how to make a good French fry. And I'm telling you, that woman was a bloody genius. I sat there mesmerized in front of her for probably 3 hours, while which she went through the whole anatomy of a potato, how to peel it, how to cook it, how to dice it, how to slice it, how to treat it, how to scallop it. I thought, I didn't want to know that much about potatoes ever. But it made a difference. Potatoes are a carrier for what they're cooked in. Salt adds crunch. Now I'm going to tell you how McDonald's French fries are done.
Ed? We're running a little long.
I'm not done talking yet. So this side of the
You asked me to cue you.
Okay, thank you very much. He's the boss. Potatoes. Idaho, Burbank, Russet. Great potatoes. You know why? Volcanic ash. Picks up a lot of mineral. Higher solid content. The higher the solid content of the potato, the better it cooks. Okay? Blanch them in steam after you dice it or slice it. Blanch them in steam. Par cooking. Stops their degradation. Salt them going down the line. After you spray them with sugar. Liquid sugar. Why? Because it caramelizes the outside of the potato, gives it that brown note, adds a certain flavor component, because caramelized tastes different than the straight sugar. And then when you cook them in animal fat, it picks up that flavor. In my opinion, it's the perfect French fry. What's being done in restaurants today is all focused on vegetable oil. I'll tell you something. Vegetable oil is not as good for you as animal fat. Why? The processing. Chef, thank you. You get an A. Give yourself 2 forks. So, okay, he wants me to quit. I'm going to take your questions. And if you don't ask me a question, my feelings are going to be hurt. So ask questions, sir.
You know, once you start a restaurant or a chain of restaurants, to maintain the quality, you know, I go to new restaurants and I see them for about 6 months. that they're knocking themselves out. And after that, there could be a change in personnel, there could be this or that. The stress in the business. And I don't see the quality there anymore. You gave us some good advice in the beginning. How do you reinvigorate?
3 things you could never forget. That's very important in the restaurant industry. People, people, people. You can have the best recipe, the best decor, the best travel pack, the best equipment, the best product, and lousy people, you got a shitty restaurant. No way around it. So systems, processes, procedures, and motivation and recognition of a job well done. Human beings want to be praised, not criticized. Human beings want their self-esteem elevated, never diminished. And I've been in too many kitchens where the I don't even want to say sous chefs because most chefs aren't like this, but the managers who know nothing about culinary are out there bitching at the people in the kitchen because they're not getting it up fast enough. You got to get it up here fast. And they're short labor. So they're yelling at their people to make up for problems that they created by not staffing the joint. So quality people, staffing, training, education, and support. And that is the lifeblood of restaurants, is the people. That is the number one most important asset you got. And you'll train, supervise, mentor, develop, and check. I used to do this all the time. You get what you expect and what you inspect. Are you thinking, oh, I have to do that all the time. When you get old, you're really going to have to do that. I shaved my head because somebody told me one time if I didn't have hair, I wouldn't have to pee as much. That's a big lie. Okay, back to people. It's important. There's no asset you'll ever have in your life in a restaurant more important than people. And I don't care what the industry is. I don't care what it is. I had the good fortune to work with Cheney Brothers, which is the sponsor of this show. Wonderful people. I went to their kitchen. I can't remember what town it was now. They had a wonderful kitchen upstairs in the chef center. And I talked to them a lot about the kinds of food. I was working for Dac. I was helping those guys trying to get to the point where they could franchise. That's a whole other story. They're really good people. But Cheney Brothers is a great asset. They'll help you with the culinary side. Nobody's going to help you with the people side. That's all I do as the owner. There's not a business on the face of the earth that can succeed without good quality employees that are treated like human beings and valued as the most important asset in the business. Why would you want to open up a business, spend millions of dollars, hire people, and then treat them like garbage? When you're gone, what are they going to do? I always say the best run restaurants have people that perform perfectly in the absence of management and close supervision. If you can't get your people they got to know what's in it for them. If I do a really good job, boss, what am I? And I'll tell you, the immigrants we have in our country that work in the restaurant industry are so diminished all the time. It's terrible. These people just want a chance. Give them a chance. Elevate them. Teach them. Help them grow. Help them learn. Get them to a point where they can buy your restaurant when you're getting ready to die. Everybody that's in your restaurant is a future general manager. I started working for McDonald when I was 18 years old, cutting brownies, making strawberry shortcake, and picking up garbage off. That was another thing. They used to say, that, go pick up the lot. I said, how do you pick up the lot? That's a management thing. Go pick up the lot. Well, what's that mean? No, we want you to go out and go across the parking lot and pick up litter. Make sure it's clean, make sure it's neat. Your job is to make sure the parking lot looks good all the time. You can't be a part-time manager to people. You got to be a full-time manager. Teach, study, watch, learn, correct, fix, help. Don't ever diminish any human being. because they become your enemy psychologically. People, 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 and when in doubt, people. Take care of it. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. My name's Chris. I'm with the Florida Restaurant and Lodging
Fred?
Association.
Fred?
Chris.
Chris?
Yeah.
Chris, I envy your hair.
Thank you. I'm working on it. How would you convince or motivate young people to get into the business of either restaurant touring or franchising?
Well, from my point of view, be the example of the best of us. Be a role model. And then tell them. Say, I think you could really become a great restaurateur if you, kids are going to school today. They have no idea what they're going to do. They're going to go to college because that's what everybody does. When they go to college, they get dumber and dumber and dumber the whole time they're there. Because it's all about theory, it's not about actuality. So you got to make people a fraction of you. Teach, educate, learn, support, and just over and over and over again. And when in doubt, do it again. There's no way to get anybody to do something they don't want to do. So you got to learn how to motivate people. You got to learn how to trust those people. You give them responsibility. The sooner you give them responsibility and help them with that, you move them on to the next and the next and the next. They grow and they grow and they grow. How did you do it? What was your path to become who you are? And you're probably not as much as you could be if you'd had just a little bit more. So remember that when you're working with the next person. Who's next? Young lady.
How would you either change what you've done or change your advice to incorporate AI into a restaurant system?
I don't want anything to do with AI. 2 reasons. Barbara's job, she's smarter than I am. And I don't need artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has 0 common sense, and it's a crutch for not doing the work yourself. We're going to develop a whole society of people that don't know how to do, only how to punch buttons. Well, I'm 82 years old. I'm not going to see the end result of all this. The kids of today will. There's been a lot of movies and stuff done about the utopian society and technology and how it takes over. We need to be aware of that. I'm scared to death the kids that are in schools, grade schools, middle schools, high schools, and colleges today that are using AI. I gotta tell you, I was going to write a speech for this thing. I thought, I'll just let AI do it. It did a perfect job, but it wasn't me. It was a hell of a speech. Except nobody can do what it's said to do. Because we're all humans. We fail. We make mistakes. We take shortcuts. If you don't allow for the human condition, no computer's going to fix it. They have no soul. Okay, maybe that's an 80-year-old guy talking, or maybe a 16-year-old kid. I fear for that. I'm not happy with AI. If I was running a restaurant, if you brought AI up to me, I'd fire your ass in a second. Because I'm not interested. Yes, sir.
The only thing that I would say to that would be that if you're looking for what your market is within a certain radius, AI would be able to pull that down for you a lot faster than a human would be able.
All right, I want to ask you a question. This is a serious question, because I think you make a good point. I'm going to go get my cards over here. What do you think is the oldest tavern in the United States today, and how old is it?
Francis Tavern.
What?
Francis Tavern in New York City.
Say it again?
Francis Tavern in New York
It's
City.
one of the top 10, but no. You know?
No, sir.
Okay, the oldest tavern is the White Horse Tavern in Newport, Rhode Island. It was built in 1673. What AI systems did they use to keep that thing going? Okay, second question. What's the oldest restaurant in the United States? Okay. Well, you have to have gray hair and be really old to know this one. The oldest restaurant, continuous operation in the United States, was built in 1826. It's the Union Oyster House. Now, I'll give you another one. And if you don't get this one right, you're all going to get an F today. What is the oldest restaurant in Florida, and when was it founded? Are you Florida residents? You don't know the answer to this question? Come on.
The Columbia restaurant.
Yes, the Columbia Restaurant. It was built in 1905. Why do those three joints still exist? Why do you think they still exist?
People.
They develop people and pass it on to their families, their kids, their grandkids, their great-grandkids, their great-great-grandkids, their great-great-grand, and him when he was 4 years old. If you build a restaurant and you manage it correctly, you provide the vision and leadership, you can do this. I'm going to give you one little thought about this. I don't want to get too far off point here. If you lease property and you lease the building, you're never going to be able to do that. You've got to own the land in the building. That's why McDonald's, right today, is sitting on over $5 billion worth of real estate. $5 billion worth of real estate in 50,000 restaurants around the world. That's stability. Food cost goes up, labor cost goes up, the land cost is pretty much fixed until government starts raising property taxes and all the other crap that government does because they spend your money with no responsibility for the outcome. Okay, next question.
Over here.
Okay, I love the guy with the good haircut up there.
Yours as well. What's something that you think independents should be looking at or learning from a bigger corporate restaurant that they're not looking at?
Nothing. We all are on the same road. Quality, service, cleanliness, value, people. If you own a restaurant, the most important thing you can do every day is ask your employees what they want and need. The very most important thing you can do that same day is ask your customers what they want and what they need. And pay attention to the answers. Because they're going to tell you the truth, but it's in code. Oh, the food was wonderful. Well, what did you like particularly? Well, I don't know, it's just good. I thought it was wonderful, now it's good. They can't tell you, you got a problem. If they can tell you why they enjoyed the meal, then you're doing something right. And then you can pursue that. It's very important, I don't care if you own one restaurant and it's fine dining, you need to survey your customers all the time and ask them what they think you could do better. Now, most of the answers are going to be BS, but you're going to find nuggets in there. You got to learn to pan the gold out of consumer input. And don't give them a card that says, how'd you like the food? They're going to lie. Yes.
Well, what happens if that was all?
What's your name?
My name's Tim.
What?
Tim.
Sims?
Tim.
Tim? I'm deaf. Okay, Tim, I'm old. Forgive me, Tim.
That's all right. So would you change your recipe then? Like, say that came right from your recipe and your customers are saying it could be better, but that's your recipe that you have in your cookbook.
Well, I'm going to tell you, that's a very, very hard question to answer. I'm going to give you an example of something, I'm going to tell you what you really have to do, in my opinion. McDonald's was going to sell pizza. We were trying to decide whether we wanted to do it or not. So we did a lot of market research. We had panels, and we bring people in trying to decide what would be the best pizza for us to put in the USA. Well, we found out pizza is extremely local. You know, if you go to Steubenville, Ohio, it's the Carlos Pizza, because that was the only pizza joint there, and that's what everybody ate. So they expected it to be square cut, and they expected it to be a square pan or a rectangular pan, lots of mozzarella cheese, and crispy pepperoni on top that had been baked in an oven before they put it on the pizza. If you go to Chicago, you got tavern cut, that's square. Because the taverns would make basic pizza and put it on the bar for bar food. That's where instead of a pizza pie cut, it was a square cut. Culturally, all this happens. Food is regional, customers are regional, and you gotta know the market. You just gotta ask a lot of questions, and you gotta think real hard about what those answers are like. When you say, hey, how was the food? When a waiter says to the table, well, how was everything? Do you think they're gonna tell him the truth? They're not gonna, because nobody wants that adversarial role. Oh, everything is wonderful. So how do you do it? You tell me. You're the chef. What's your answer?
Do you want to sell food or do you want to promote your ego?
Hey, there you go. There's a kernel of wisdom. Put that on a chart and hang it. Yeah. Do you want to sell it or do you want to brag about it? We're all in the business to make money. There's no carousel about that. We're in the business of making money. And if you don't have good quality, you can't get the price.
How'd you fix mad cow disease?
Say that again.
How'd you fix mad cow at McDonald's?
What did he say?
Mad cow, how do you fix mad cow?
Oh, you don't fix mad cow. Well, I'll tell you the story. It's a little bit long. They stopped slaughtering all cattle in the United States until they could test them all. So the boning houses could not bone animals. So McDonald's took our jet with cattle buyers. We went to every cattle market we could get to. We bought cattle for cash, sent them to our own slaughtering houses, which was Keystone Foods in Philadelphia, and Golden State Foods in Colorado, in California. And the guy that was doing this work was in Philadelphia. I was a regional manager in Philadelphia. I was signing checks for $19, $20, $25, $30 million every week to buy cattle in the United States. We bought the cattle from the farmer, we tested all those cattle, we butchered them ourselves so we knew exactly where the meat was coming from. Now, side story. A young lady from the Philadelphia Inquirer she was a reporter, could not understand how McDonald's could sell beef when nobody else could. So she went to 7 McDonald's and got hamburgers for her, raw hamburgers for her dogs. I'm going to tell you, we had a policy at McDonald's. You could not give out raw food to anybody ever. You'd lose the franchise and you'd get terminated. Well, a couple of McDonald's operators in Philadelphia decided they wanted to be good people and wanted their dog to have some fresh hamburger, so they gave her hamburger. And she put him in a styrofoam cooler in the trunk of her car, took it to the University of Pennsylvania, Penn State, to their animal lab, and had it tested to find out if it was horse meat or not. Because she couldn't understand how we could have cattle. So she wrote an article about the fact that McDonald's was using horse meat to get around the ban on mad cow in the restaurants in Philadelphia. Well, I was the regional vice president of Philadelphia at the time, scared the hell out of me. So I called our lawyers. They said, we'll get back to you. I thought, I'm not waiting on them. I called the lady up and said, young lady, my name is Ed Rose, I'm vice president of McDonald's Corporation. I understand you're writing a story about McDonald's using horse meat. I want you to Herb Lawton, and Lawton Foods is doing all our meat in Philadelphia. I'll take you on a tour so you can see what we're doing, and you get your meat samples from him so I can see it. She said, okay. So she came down, we said, you could, all these hamburgers coming down this line, you pick out whatever you want and you can go test it. All came back cattle. Well then, she said, I'm going to publish the article anyway because these stores got different meat than what you're showing. I said, you go ahead and I'm going to own the Philadelphia Inquirer when I'm done. So I called the editor. I said, I want that meat tested by a lab in Philadelphia, and I want it side by side to the meat that I bring you. Well, guess what? She lived in Westchester, Pennsylvania, which is big horse country, She rode horses all the time. And in the back of her station wagon, she had saddles, bridles, horse blankets, all of her gear. And she contaminated the meat by putting it in a cooler that she kept all her riding stuff in when she was doing lunches and stuff. And she contaminated the meat sample. The apology was almost enough to keep me quiet.
A little off subject, but can you talk a little bit about maybe your training programs and the importance of training your staff, your management, and how that affected consistency?
Yes, absolutely. When McDonald's first started, Fred Turner, who was the first franchisee and the first executive of the company, was an Army sergeant. And he had his people, he worked for Ray Kroc. He was Ray Kroc's son that he never had. And he wrote the operations manual. And it was as precise as sending a rocket ship to the moon. We had two manuals. One was the operations manual, and one was the maintenance manual. One was about cleaning, sanitation, equipment, and the other was about how do you cook food, sanitation, grooming, and all this stuff. We would not let anybody work in a restaurant without 35 hours of training as a manager on just operations. I used to memorize pages out of that operations manual, excuse me, and quiz my managers. I'd go to a restaurant and I'd say, I'm a brand new 16-year-old crew kid, and you're gonna teach me how to filter oil. You're gonna teach me how to filter the vats. If that manager couldn't teach me, how the hell could they teach one of our employees? So we tested our people every day on every aspect of the critical points of McDonald's. That was the foundation of building an executive management team where details matter. If you scrub the corners of the floor, the middle will always be clean. If you scrub the mop bucket and if you clean the towels, the middle of the floor will be clean and the corners will be clean. If you're going to calibrate your grills, calibrate them 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night. Why? Because of standard temperature pressure. Gas pressure goes like this, the temperature goes like this, your grills creep up, they creep down, they're all over the place. You get what you expect, teach, and what you inspect, supervise. If you don't teach, if you don't inspect, it's a whole point of leadership, which is visionary and strategic, and management, which is tactical and daily. It's the function. Train, 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 educate, educate. And here's the one thing you always do. I'm teaching you how to wash dishes properly and bust tables properly because someday I want you to replace me as the chef. Even if you own one restaurant, create a career path so the least of us can become the greatest of us. If you teach them everything you know, and you teach this person everything you know, and you teach her person everything he taught that person, pretty soon you start to get people that are superb at what they do. This is the last story I'm going to tell you about that. There was a kid working up at Factory Deck, and I love those guys. I wish they'd run their restaurants a little bit different, but I love them. They had a guy working for them, who was a manager, who was from Venezuela. He walked with his mother out of Venezuela, up into Mexico, up to the United States, and ended up in Sarasota. He started that journey when he was 6 years old. When I met him, he was 30. He had a child of his own. And he said to me, what can I do to make sure that my daughter can have a career better than mine. I said, do what you did. You had a journey. You studied, you learned, you went to school, you learned English. You teach her to be self-reliant, teach her the value of education, give her the latitude to make some mistakes once in a while. But at the end of the day, she's going to be her own person, just like you're your own person. You did it yourself. So these are the kinds of things you gotta recognize every person as an individual and understand they have strengths and weaknesses. Amplify their strengths and help them minimize their weaknesses. It's an art, it's not a science. Okay, I don't know, are we done? Oh, wait, here's the thing. He may be done. Are you done? The time to go back to work? Okay, what's the one thing I said you're going to not forget?
People.
Amen, brother, you did it. I'm not going to kiss you. Thank you very much. And by the way,
Programs like this?
I didn't even look at the damn thing.
So what do you think? You want to do
Okay,
more programs
have a
like
good
this?
time.
Thank you all for coming. Who was it that asked the first question? I don't recall. You did. You get a hat. You walk away with a fabulous prize. Thank you all very much for coming. You have a